Welcome to Real Women's Stories. Today's topic is something that I advocate hugely. I'm going to be interviewing somebody about confidence.
I remember being just so embarrassed and feeling my face flush and just being really embarrassed. And from then on, I was kind of programmed to believe like I'm shy and I'll do anything to avoid embarrassment.
Without confidence and without believing in ourselves, how can we fulfill our dreams? How can we fulfill our goals and aspirations?
I have a lot of compassion for her because she was doing the best that she knew at the time. So she created all of these like strategies to get through. And so I think, I'm proud of her. And I actually feel quite emotional.
This is Real Women's Stories. To be doing this podcast, I have to have confidence, right? I really had to put myself out there, and I had to do a lot of work on myself in order to deliver this podcast, to deliver it each week. Every single episode I do, I really have to delve deep inside myself, inside my soul and my heart, and feel confident. It's not just about appearing confident, it's about feeling it. Today's episode is featuring a leading coach, Lisa Hopper. She helps executives in the leadership world really get to where they want to in life. So my guest is launching a book on the 28th of January. It's called Truly You. And I've got a couple of endorsements that I really like to read out to you, because this really does frame how people perceive Lisa. Lisa has X-ray vision into a person's mind and soul. What she sees and articulates about why we do what we do makes for a fascinating read. What I love about Lisa's approach is she holds up a mirror and asks us what we see. No running, no dodging. Just the hard questions that offer truth and motivation as a path forward. Just enough coaching tools and inspiration to get you where you've always wanted to go. I know this is going to be a life-changing episode for you, and I believe it's going to be for me as well. So I don't want to talk any further. I just want to get straight into the episode. Hi, Lisa. How are you doing?
Hi, Lisa. I am great. It feels like a double whammy of Lisa's today. But yeah, I'm doing really well.
It does. Obviously, our parents chose very, very powerful names.
I think so. I'm proud of them for that.
You are a very inspirational lady. And I know that you've helped loads of people. Like, how did you get into coaching?
I love helping people feel confident. I love helping develop others. I love seeing people shine. So I've always been a team player, even not just in the work environment, but in my sports. It was always team sports. So I had that, I think at my core, that was something that was important to me. The real truth is that I was watching television show, a reality TV show with my flatmate. Every Monday we used to have a supper club, and we used to come together and just watch escapism TV. And we were watching this show, and there was a life coach on there. And my flatmate turned to me and she said, "Lisa, you'd be brilliant at that." And I was like, I think I would, wouldn't I? So at this point, I had absolutely no idea if I would be or not. But I went to see this life coach. I looked him up. I went to see him. We had a consultation. And I kind of went, okay, let's try it and let's have a go and let's see.
Sometimes people misconceive the idea of what a life coach is and what they can do and what they're capable of doing. Give me a kind of idea of the types of people that you coach.
Half of my business is a school that I run for coaches to help them grow their business. So when I set the school up, I thought it was going to be, mainly the how to grow a business, because I didn't have any business building skills when I started out. And then there would be this little bit around like growing you. And what I've seen is it's completely the opposite. So you do need some of the practical how-to, but the biggest emphasis on the work that we do is around like how you look at yourself, how you relate to your thoughts, how you judge others, like how we show up in the world is what creates our results or lack of results. And so a big focus on the work that I do with the coaches building a business is about reconnecting them back to the truth of who they are. So that's one half. And then the other half is working with individuals on pretty much the exact same thing, but minus the business, build a coaching business.
I want to understand when it all started for you. Like, can we just go back, way back when you were a child? Because I really want to understand Lisa when she was younger and how she grew to gain this confidence, which is your new book, and that's what it's about.
I was a shy kid. Like I was a happy kid. I come from a very loving family. I have parents who've been together, still together for 50 years.
Amazing.
So there was a lot of love in the household. I have one older brother who, again, we fought like siblings fought, but there was a lot of love there as well. And I loved being at my grand's house. I used to go to my grand's house. So one of my favorite experiences is like memories of being a kid was sitting in her spare bedroom with my little chalkboard and my stuffed animals on the sofa bed and just playing teacher. But when I was buying some chalk with my nan in the post office, she was in the queue and I had gone off to grab this chalk and I came back to the queue and I said something which was kind of goofy. I don't know what it was that I was doing as a little kid. You don't care what people think. But in that moment, suddenly I cared because it wasn't my gran in the queue. I was talking to someone else, a complete stranger. And I remember being just so embarrassed and feeling my face flush and just being really embarrassed. And from then on, I was kind of programmed to believe like I'm shy and I'll do anything to avoid embarrassment.
That's so interesting that that one moment literally affected how you then perceived yourself, and you started writing this narrative.
Yeah. And then reinforcing the narrative. So as I grew, like as a teenager at school, again, I remember this boy in my class like asked me to be his girlfriend and I didn't want to. I didn't like him. And I was really immature and I felt really embarrassed. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't want him to like me. And I didn't know how to say it. So I told the teacher to get him to stop bothering me. So all of this was happening. And it's so interesting that we don't really get taught any of this, like what's shaping our patterns and behaviors, but it's all going in there and it's shaping how we run our life. And there's so many experiences that I can remember like that. So it comes from this belief of like, oh, I'm shy.
Can we get confused as well? Because I know, especially with the younger generation coming up into the corporate world, like I've spoken to some of, my staff around me, and I think that there is a confusion between anxiety, embarrassment, fear. They label it as just, I'm anxious. There's just one almost overall label for this, for all these different emotions we're going through, which, as you say, we need to really look hard at ourselves and think, why am I feeling like this? Is there a reason? And how I can reframe this feeling, because is it true? Is it true what I'm thinking and feeling? But don't you find that interesting that, within the corporate world, we're talking about, we have to talk about people's mental health. I think that there is a confusion between different feelings and what those feelings are and why we're feeling them.
Yeah.
And to getting people to understand more about our emotions. And as you say, it's that feeling of embarrassment or feeling of fear or whatever, but it's just labeled up as, I've got mental health issues and I'm
Mhm.
anxious.
Yes, I do. And the brain loves to generalize, distort, delete information. It can't handle like all of these, things that come in at us every second. So we get into this pattern of generalizing and then it comes out in our language. So we start to say things like mental health, mental well-being, instead of actually I'm identifying that I'm really frustrated. And that is what is creating my anger. Right. Or I'm feeling really anxious right now. And that is what is creating my avoidance. So if it can be helpful, it's not like a sheep dip approach. It's like, it's not a one size fits all, but it can be really helpful this is what I love to do. And this is what I work with a lot of people on. And it's not always going to be a coach. It might be that things have occurred in the past and actually therapy might be a better fit for somebody who's really experiencing very bold, strong emotions and a physical response in their body. But what I like to do is I'll just make some stuff up just to give you some examples. But let's say I'm feeling really anxious about money, right? So I'm detecting like, where do I feel the anxiety about money? And so often for me, anxiety manifests in my stomach. It's like, feels like a knot. So I'm like, okay, so I ask that part of me, what is it that you want from me? So instead of just automatically believing, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to run out of money. I don't have enough money. I'm asking it, like, what is it that you want from me? And then I'm listening. So I'm not listening to believe it, I'm listening to understand it. So often I can hear the story is, you're going to run out of money, right? So let's say it's like, I don't have enough. There's a scarcity element to that. That's what's creating the feeling. And so then I get to look and see, is that accurate? And so I might look at my bank and I might be like, well, by what month are we in now? January. By March, I might have run out of money. Okay. Like looking at the data, that could be accurate. So then what I do is I go even further and say, what would I love to create? Given the circumstances, what would I love to create? Okay. I would love to create X amount by next month. Okay. What's the one next thing I need to do in order to stand a chance of that occurring? And suddenly I'm back in an empowered state. I've got a clear action step. But we don't know to do that. So we get invested in the feeling, we get more worried about the feeling, we add more layers of thought, which creates more anxiety, more not. And suddenly then we're in overwhelm as well. And we're just riding this wave of, I've no money, it's running out. And it's almost, we come to the conclusion that we're powerless. And that doesn't just apply to money, it just doesn't just apply to anxiety. There was a period in my life where actually I was really frustrated. And the frustration would manifest like here. And I could hear my voice getting squeakier and squeakier. And I was like, I'm so, it was like some energy was blocked and I was really frustrated. And when I asked it, like, what is it that you want from me in the positive, it gave me my answer. And I knew then what I had to do, but there were some very difficult, tough moves that were required.
What was the moment where you felt powerless and then suddenly you thought, I feel empowered? Like I know, like there must have been like a low point where there was a switch, because everyone kind of has to hit rock bottom to kind of just have this epiphany moment. What was that epiphany moment for you and how did it feel?
I will give you money examples. We have to go back a few years because I've done a lot of work on my money and my wealth, and I'm not in the position that I was before. So I'll go back to a time where I'd received a bill from a supplier that was 5 figures, and it came in on a Friday, just in an email, and it was like, by the way, you need to pay this in X amount of months, or there's I can't remember what it was now, like 30% interest rate, right? And I was like, what the heck? Like that's not an insignificant figure. And so I felt really helpless. I went straight into victim thinking, like, you've done me wrong, right? There was a lot of righteousness there. You've done me wrong. How dare you? I specifically asked you to avoid the situation. You haven't educated me. You haven't. So it was a lot of like, out there, you're to blame and poor little me. And so what I did, I worked with my coach on this, and she said to me, Lisa, this is your chance to see opportunity in the face of adversity. So she didn't buy into my like poor little me story at all. But she was compassionate. So she was empathetic. She was like, I hear you and we can create this. So this is your chance to see opportunity in the face of adversity. And that moment was like, oh, I can see a possibility, a glimpse of a possibility that I couldn't until that conversation, because I was so focused on how dare they. And this is a massive amount of money that I've never created in this short time period before. That she was like, I know who you are. Let's get to work. Right. So that invitation was, to me, I was like, man, that is love. That is unconditional love. She's not willing to accommodate any small stories that I have about myself. And she's only willing to invite me back into my greatness. And I write about that in the book. So I think, we have incredible friends and incredible communities. And if something like that happens to us, our friends are the ones who are like, yeah, fuck them. Like, how dare they? I'm with you. That you've been so hard done by. I'm so sorry that you went through this. And you're like, I know. And you just get into the story with them. And it feels so therapeutic in that moment to be like, yeah, damn them. But it doesn't help you get out of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can be compassionate with yourself. You can have your moment. We're not saying that you have to be this like Zen person the whole time. It's like, have your moment, be with your experience, allow yourself the grace of that, but then don't have that be the context for your life.
Yeah.
Like, remember who you are. So let's create.
It's almost like, and I will say this word because it's almost sitting in that victim mode. We can sit in victim mode and blame other people, But if we just constantly blame other people, no change is going to happen, because by blaming other people, you can't make people change. You have to look at yourself and say, okay, well, how can I change this situation? You know, how can I, if I'm not happy with my job, or I'm not happy in a relationship, or what can I do to start making those changes? Because we all know that as soon as we start making those changes, there happens to be a ripple effect on the way other people behave towards us.
Yeah, 100%.
So tell me, you're releasing your book on the 28th of January. Tell everybody what the book's about, how it can help, us, because I know this is about personal development, and one of the biggest themes that runs consistently through is about confidence and about self-belief. Like, talk to me what the book can offer me, how can people get hold of it, and what drove you to write the book.
So it's here. So I have a copy. I'm currently using it as a mouse mat, but this is the book. So Truly You.
Truly You.
More of your true self. I wrote it because I just have learned so much about myself in the past 7-8 years, where I've really like stepped into my business, and I've taken risks, and I've lived more boldly than ever before, and I've felt bolder emotions than ever. I haven't played life safe, I would say, in the last 7-8 years. You know, it's really been outside of my comfort zone living. And there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of tears, tantrums, rage, love, laughter, like all the emotions. Like there's been a lot of that in the past 7-8 years. And so there's been some incredible things that I've worked with on my coaches about how to do life and how to do it well, and how to take back ownership, like radical ownership. And so I wanted to put it into something that others could have access to. So what I would say is there's an introduction to it. So we talk about like how thought creates our feelings. We've talked a little about that today, how our thoughts create our feelings, how our feelings then drive our behaviors and our actions. And that's what creates our results or not results. So that's the first part of the book. And then the next part is 13 lessons that I have learned that have been so profound for me. I talk about the secondary gain. I talk about forgiveness. That has been a big part of my journey. I talk about the judgments on others that we have are often a reflection of the judgments that we have on ourselves, and they keep us stuck, so stuck. So there's these 13 life lessons, and then there's 5 invitations into, I say like a new you, but I just haven't found words to express it. But I think that's why I call it truly you, because it's like the you that's underneath all of the shit that you've learned to believe about yourself, right? That innate potential that you have that's ready to be unleashed, but we just have a lot of labels and ideas that are contracting us. So I would say it's the start of a conversation. There's exercises in there that you can do to bring the lessons to life off the page, but it is very much once you've got this information in your hands and you've read it, the living it is what will have it make a difference for you.
It sounds amazing. I mean, I definitely think it's something that, or a book and a toolkit that I can't wait to read, and I would like to use it in my own coaching sessions, because sometimes I think it's good to give people something to go away and read and actually action themselves, because we can do work as coaches with people one-to-one, but unless they go away and actually start working on themselves and uncovering things. You talked about, and there was lots of tears and emotions over the last 7 years. Talk me through some of those tears and emotions.
Yeah. I mean, I've moved. So I currently live in Glasgow. I left London, which is where I was when I set up my business. I moved to Glasgow. I've been to Vancouver. I'm now back in Glasgow. So I left to go to Vancouver thinking maybe this is somewhere that I want to stay. On paper, it is the city for me. But I got there and I felt like I was really missing the community element. And I thought like I was really trying to force it to work. You know, it was really hard getting an apartment as a British citizen. So I don't have residency there. There's so many details to this, but it just felt like, oh my gosh, this is just so hard. Like simple things are not being simple. And so I was planning on going on a little bit of a trip. As a British resident, I had to leave every 6 months and then come back. And so I was planning on going on a trip to South America, but then the apartment flooded in Vancouver. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've only been in here a few months. I've had to furnish the entire place. And now it's just flooded just before I'm about to leave. You know, and you just say, is this a sign? So all of that was happening. And then because I didn't know how long I was going to be unable to get back into the apartment and I was leaving the country, I was in Airbnb. So I was spending a ton of money. So I had a place in Glasgow that the tenants had given notice on. So I was paying for this, paying for my storage in Glasgow. I was then paying for my apartment in Vancouver, the storage in Vancouver. And now I was living in an Airbnb. So, there was a lot. And then on Christmas, I could move back in. So I was flying back on Boxing Day. So I was spending Christmas like cleaning the Airbnb that I was in. I arrived back on Boxing Day after a really exhausting flight, and there was no trolley to help me move my stuff out of storage. I was trying to move like double beds out of storage across car parks on my own. And I was just like, oh, like, this is not how life's meant to be. So I was just feeling,
You
I was
kind of felt
exhausted.
like the world was against you
Yeah.
at this point. It's
Yeah.
like, what more? I think we've all been there though. We're trying to do this thing, and yet it just feels that everything we're touching is falling, not
Mhm.
in the right way we want to. So the pieces of the puzzle aren't coming together, and it just
Mhm.
feels like, you're desperate. Everyone's against you. Was that your kind of lowest point where you thought, oh my god, like, what am I going to do now?
I would say it was one of them, because what I haven't shared yet is the I was in a lot of story about I have to do everything on my own, right? So like I'm a single woman running my business, and I was in a story of I have to do everything on my own. It's twice as expensive, it's twice as hard. You can't lift a double bed on your own. I couldn't get anyone to help me because it was Boxing Day, and it would have only taken a few hours, so no one wanted the job.
Sure.
So I had all of that narrative. Like I was finding every reason, on my mind, I should say, my mind was finding every reason to like be in a bad mood about this. But the other thing I haven't shared is when I came back to Glasgow, I had received a notification from the hospital about an appointment that I'd been waiting for a year, and they'd had a cancellation. So I went into the hospital, and the doctor there, he put me on a pill. It was a contraceptive pill. I'd never taken it before. But whilst I was there, he gave me this pill, and I started taking it. And then in January, when I was back in Vancouver, I was just feeling like it's so hard to get out of bed. I don't want to be here. Everything was a fight. I would get out of bed and I'd be in the shower and I'm washing my hair and I'm like, just go back to bed. Just go back to bed. Cancel all your calls. Right? It was like, I don't know what was going on, but it wasn't me. And I was having all of these like noises inside of my head, just that were like, you don't have to do this anymore, you know? And I was on a call. I'd signed up to a coaching program. It was 30 grand for the year. And I was just going into that when I started taking this pill. And I was feeling like, I'm not seen. I'm not seen by the coach. He's creating me as negative. But I was having these wild emotions. Like it was pure rage. It was like looking in the mirror and like screaming, And I was like, who is this woman? This has never been me. And so I was on this call with one of the coaches from this program. And it turned out it was an hour call. It turned out to be about 3 hours, I think it was in the end. I couldn't hear where he was trying to point me to. And I was exhausted. I got off the call and I laid on the sofa and I just cried relentlessly. It was just like the sobbing that just was out of control, wouldn't stop. And I went to bed and I woke up and I was still sobbing. I was like, what is going on? And so luckily, I have done enough work on this understanding of how our experiences are created to detach myself from the narrative that I was experiencing, to detach my identity from the woman who I could see screaming in the mirror, to detach my true self from the one who was lying sobbing on the sofa. So it was almost like I was watching this body have this experience, but there was a knowing underneath all of that, like, don't worry, that's not you. That's just an experience, but it's not who you are. You're safe. So there was this, like, it's really strange to be somebody who used to be like mega practical and not spiritual at all. Like, it's strange to hear myself saying this.
Yeah.
But that was my experience. And so in that relaxed mind, I suddenly had this thought, check your pill. And I was like, oh gosh, what is that pill the doctor put me on? So I went to have a look, and sure enough, I Googled it, as you do, Dr. Google.
Yeah.
And all of these women, suicidal thoughts,
Wow.
Relentless sobbing, people saying I was driving and all of a sudden it just came over me, I had to pull over, I couldn't drive because I was just crying. It's like, "Oh my gosh, that's what it is." So I put the pill in the bin, and then almost immediately, like within the next day or 2, I was back to my normal self. This is why I speak so passionately when I'm like, "You're not your experience. Your identity isn't your worth, your value isn't at stake. We have patterns of behavior that are in alignment with our thinking, and if we're just believing our thinking, automatically, you're gonna create a lot of suffering for yourself."
Thank you for sharing that with us, because it's hard. And I know a lot of women that will listen to this, if they've ever, been in that situation. And I know I have with my menopause. We have to remove ourselves, as you say, from the situation, almost have an out of body experience and go, who is this person behaving the way they're behaving? And who am I? There's got to be there's got to be something that's changed. That's changed. Is it outside stress? Is it medication that I'm taking? Is it something someone said to me that sparked something off or created this new person that isn't me? Let's go back. Let's detach ourselves. And as you say, let's look in the mirror. Let's look in the mirror at who we really are. Now, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Let's go back to where you started and thinking about your own personal journey, where you were this little shy kid, and then transitioning into that enlightenment of, oh, I want to be a coach, I can be a coach. And also, by the way, releasing a book, that takes a hell of a lot of confidence and, I guess, self-belief. Like, talk to me about how you're feeling now. Talk to me about all of that.
I feel really proud, actually, is probably the word that springs to mind, because I think my entire internal landscape has changed. And so when I think about that little kid, it's like, oh man, like I have a lot of compassion for her because she was doing the best that she knew at the time. So she created all of these like strategies to get through. And so I think, I'm proud of her. And I actually feel quite emotional.
Oh, bless you.
And no, I feel proud of her, and I feel proud of who I am today. And I would say that um um having that emotional connection to a transformation that you've been through, when it comes to things like writing a book, it doesn't even feel like confidence comes first, is what I would say. It didn't even occur to me to need confidence to write this book. It was genuinely like, I write in it, actually, there'll be 10, if 10,000 people read it, there'll be 10,000 different versions of it, because you'll all have your own experience of it that you will believe. But my mission about having people be able to have their voice, be able to make a contribution, to know that they're valued, like that's so much bigger than anything else. And so I think you just let that part of you express, and before you know it, like a book's born in the world, and you didn't even realize that you needed confidence. So it's sometimes it feels strange to hear, like, man, there's so much courage in you. I often get that there's so much courage in you. You're so brave, and I'm like, I don't even see that. I don't even really take a moment to acknowledge that, because it's like, it's just a no-brainer for me that this needs to happen for all of these women out there who are playing small. Thank you for asking a question.
Oh, and thank you so much for sharing that with me. I hope you're feeling okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I acknowledge you, and you should be super proud of yourself, because you have done something incredible. And you should feel that emotion. And I'm sure that the tears that you're kind of feeling are happy tears and proud tears, because of how far you've come. And you've obviously come a long way in your journey, and it just shows everybody that if you can do it, they can do it, because we're all the same. We're all the same.
I would just finish by saying, I'm not afraid of any emotion now. Whereas, we were talking about embarrassment, and it's like all emotions have a place. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us connect. It's what repels people that we're not fit for. So tears for me, whether they're happy or sad, I don't care. They're all welcome.
This conversation for me has been inspirational, and I definitely feel that your book is going to be life changing for anyone that reads it and anyone that goes through the practicalities of going through your tool book and your guide, because I think often we do want to make changes in our lives, and not everybody is at the position where they can have a coach. So your book is going to be that first step into, well, I can't have a coach, but actually I can start making changes myself. And it's a really easy way of accessing that information. It's released on January the 28th, and I know that you've got a special offer at the moment as well. So tell us about that.
Yes, so the 28th of January it comes out. It's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be online. It's going to be in different bookstores as well, but the main portal right now is Amazon. It's going to be 99p on launch day for 48 hours. So if your listeners are listening to this before that date, I'll share a link with you, Lisa, so that you can pop it in the podcast or whatever you want to do with it. But the link will have people go onto a list, and they'll get notified of the book when it comes out, so they can grab it for 99p. And then I'm going to do lots of different incentives and run some different prizes for people as well.
Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and your expertise.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having these conversations, because honestly, this is how it starts. That one conversation with a flatmate changed my life. You'd be good at that. One conversation. So what you're doing as well, I just really want to acknowledge and recognize the importance of this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate that. Whenever somebody gets upset on my podcast and in real life in general, even when I'm coaching them, it really does touch me. And it fills me with emotion myself. And I think one of the things was that Lisa got emotional about her journey that she'd been through, looking back on this little small kid and how she's transformed herself into this empowering woman who has so much self-belief in herself. And I guess, through those experiences, she is the person who she is today. So for me, her emotions really touched me, and made me feel almost, well, first of all, I wanted to give her a big virtual hug, but also that we should all look back on our lives and have that little moment. And it doesn't matter if it's moments of sadness or tears of sadness or joyful tears, but it's important to feel those emotions and look back and acknowledge ourselves and feel proud of who we are and where we've come. I would love to help people and even guide them through Lisa's new kind of book, Truly You. So if you would like to work with me, you can get in touch with me via an email address. It's therealstoriespodcast@gmail.com. I would love to help you on your journey. If you do feel like you're kind of stuck, if you do feel like you want to take that next step forward, get in touch with me, because the work will be transformational and it will be powerful. And hopefully this podcast and the content of this podcast has sparked a little light in you. So get in touch with me and I'd love to help you. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, I have a bonus episode for you. Midweek, you can hear me. I'm going to be doing some coaching, looking back at this episode and taking some gold out of what Lisa's discussed with me today. So you can find me midweek on Real Women's Stories for my coaching practice. And if you have enjoyed this episode, you can rate us and you can follow us and subscribe. So I will leave you there. Listen to my midweek episode, because there will definitely be some gold. And then I'll see you for my midweek episode of Real Women's Stories.